Hello and welcome to Chapter 1, Interpersonal Process. Communication is something that we have had constant contact with. We have communication everything we do, everywhere we go, every relationship we have is based in communication. So, since we have had constant contact with communication, it is very easy for us to be lulled into a false sense of security. We've always been communicating, therefore we know how to communicate. And for the most part, we do have a practical knowledge of how to communicate. But that being said, without a in-depth understanding of communication, its processes, it can fundamentally diminish our relationships with others. So, we are going to be learning what communication is, some of the communication misconceptions, as well as how to communicate effectively in many contexts. So, let's dive right in. First, why study something we have been doing our entire lives? Well, first, a new perspective on something gives it a new meaning. Your textbook talks about, has a very good metaphor for this. If three blind people walk up to an elephant, one touches the tusk, the other person touches the ears, the third person touches the the leg, then all three would have a completely different meaning for the word elephant. That's very much the same way for us. How do we engage in conflict, for example? That has a very distinct, mostly negative meaning for a lot of people when it can in fact have positive meaning. Conflict is the only way to get to solution or collaboration. So, by understanding it better and gaining a new perspective, we will create new meanings for ourselves and get out of some of the preconceived false notions of communication. Also, there is a lack of effective communication out there in the world. Relationships are deteriorating. This happens a lot, especially with the advent of social media, where we would prefer to have connection with others instead of building relationships with others. Also, this is reflected by the increasing amount of divorce due to poor communication strategies. We also have workplaces. Workplaces are suffering incredibly. First of all, through lack of clarity, that because we are overloaded with information, it's very easy for people to lose sight of information, not know what information is critical, and as a result, the company losing a lot of money just based on everyday miscommunication. Not to mention the interpersonal relationships at work. Have you had a good job or a bad job? A lot of times, it's not the work that you're doing that makes your job bad. It is the communication climate that makes it either positive or negative. So, there's many reasons as to why we communicate. First, we communicate for physical needs. It is a physical need for humans to have communication with others. If anyone's ever watched Castaway, Tom Hanks decides to make a character out of the Wilson volleyball to have constant communication with them. In fact, when people are in isolation, they tend to have mental challenges once they get out of isolation. So there are physical needs that are satisfied through communication. This is also reflected by that in toxic communication relationships, people in those relationships tend to get sicker than those who are in more supportive communication relationships. We also have identity needs. We learn a lot about ourselves by the way we communicate with others. When we make a joke and people laugh, we learn that we are funny. When we communicate something very intelligent and someone responds through the way that they non-verbally react, that shows that I am intelligent. If I start talking to someone and then they start talking back, that means that, okay, I am someone worth talking to. And we continue to base these identity needs, or we create this identity based on how we communicate with others. And depending on how well we communicate, will also affect how we see ourselves as well as how we see others. We also have social needs. What makes relationships satisfying? Social interaction. Social interaction. Because we need to have social connection with others, and how do we increase our social relationships and connections with others if not by communication? And then lastly, we have practical needs. No person is an island, and as a result, we have to rely on others. I know zero about cars or about rocket science or things like that. So, for my practical needs to be met of my car getting fixed, I have to be able to communicate with others, and that is what uh, our social world is based in: communication with others. So let's go ahead and dive right on in to what communication is. It is a complex process. There were earlier models where it was just a one-way event. I am communicating to you. But later models started to have an exchange of messages where we respond with verbal and nonverbal feedback. All of this to show that communication is so complex that it is not simply defined by just one definition. There is processes on top of processes that better define communication. So, the first linear model was sender sending a message through a channel. The channel here is video. For if we were in person, it would be face to face. If I was sending this through text, then it would be through text. Then there is always going to be distortion. That distortion is called noise. This can be in a face-to-face setting. Maybe Steve is talking super loud, and as a result, I can't hear you as well. It distorts the message. It could also be in this situation, maybe your internet is messing up a little bit, and as a result, it is causing some distortion. So, the linear model does cover a lot, but it leaves a lot out. This speaks to the transactional model of communication. The component is that there is always going to be a sender, there is always going to be a receiver. The sender sends a message, or meaning they encode a lot of messages. So the code is the language that we use, and we have many different codes. We have English, Spanish, Chinese, whatever. And I have put all of these words together. Hi, my name is James. How are you? All of that then is encoded into a message. Polite greeting. I then send that message through a channel, be it video or face-to-face, and then you decode that message. Keep in mind, there are two messages here. What I intended, what I encoded, and then what you decoded. That is affected by our environment or our context. This can be how we perceive this situation, how we perceive this relationship, as well as the cultural factors that are playing on us at this time. Another thing that affects this message is noise, as I said before. But there's two big types. There's external noise, the noise that's happening outside. Um, this could be a loud noise outside, internet connectivity issues. You could even have uh, the temperature affecting you. How can I pay attention if not because I'm super cold or I'm too hot? Then there's also internal noise, and internal is the psychological stuff. This very much affects us as well because when have you ever been hungry and as a result angry at the and more irritable when it comes to receiving messages? Have you felt very sad or very frustrated or very tired? All of which can affect how we perceive a message. It can distort the message, so it is part of this noise concept. And then we have a channel. A channel is, again, face-to-face, video, all that fun stuff. There is one more thing that is a big part of this transactional model, and that is feedback. When I say something, you are going to respond in some way, shape, or form, and it's that feedback that shows me how you have received the message. So, for example, if I say a joke and you laugh, that's positive feedback for me. I've then reinforced my perception that I am indeed funny. But if you don't laugh, then that's going to show negative feedback, and I am then going to understand, okay, maybe that wasn't funny, or maybe, but I can perceive that feedback in many ways. Maybe I'm not funny anymore. Maybe you just can't take a joke. Maybe you just didn't hear it properly. Or maybe it's the culture that is so anti-humor that therefore no jokes will ever be funny. You can perceive things in many different ways, and many people do. So there are many insights to be gleaned from the transactional model of perspective of communication. First, sending and receiving messages are usually simultaneous, meaning that if I am sending a message, I am also still looking at you. I am still receiving feedback of what I've just said, what I am currently saying, or even some of the things yeah. So there's lots of ways that I am receiving messages as I'm sending them out, and vice versa. Also, meaning exists in and among people. That we are constantly creating meaning for ourselves. When someone cuts you off in the middle of the, traffic, what does that mean? When you see when someone takes the remote and changes the channel, what does that mean? When your girlfriend or boyfriend says that they are fine, what does that mean? So, meaning exists within people, but it also exists among people. That meaning is co-created. And as a result, both people have responsibility for the messages being coordinated. A good example of this could be if I were to have a shirt that said I am DTF, then what would that mean? If I were to perceive that that means downtown Fullerton, that would be my meaning for it. But obviously, with the kids, that tends to have a much different meaning than what I intended. Who is right? The majority would say that the kids' meaning would probably be more correct because maybe my meaning is not exactly true. But that would be a challenge associated with coordinating meanings. We also have another good example of this is what it means to be a socialist or a Democrat or a Republican. Each person has different perspectives on the same concept, the same ideology. Environment and noise can also affect communication. When I say, "Hi, my name is James, how are you?" but this isn't the right situation for that conversation. Maybe I say it super loud in a library. That's going to affect communication. If you don't really know me and don't want to get to know me, understandably, tears, at that point, that relationship, that relational context affects this communication. And the culture can also affect it. Maybe we have such high power differences that you should not even talk to me, or that I cannot even talk to you. So there's many different environmental factors that it can affect communication. Noise can also affect it, as I've said before. The channel also makes a difference. Have you ever had a conflict through text? Have you ever tried to break up with someone via text? That the channel obviously makes a difference in both of those situations. What about having conflict or addressing an organizational issue with someone? That might, funny enough, be done better through email so that there is a record of communication with the person. So there's many insights that can be gleaned from this model of communication, highlighting the complexity of this sort of communication. So we've just talked about what communication is, as well as the model by which it continues. Next, we're going to be talking about the communication principles.